again. So I wish you have a great day or had a great day. And you know, the title Energy, Love and Consciousness is of course a wide field that we are addressing here. Energy, love and consciousness, as I described it before, are all fields of life that we are part of. Every moment and every event in our life takes place in these dimensions. That's why I chose a name for this program. Your life is taking place in these fields of life. From forming your intention to your biological manifestation, to your personal development that unfolds then with all your experiences in life, whether it's flow or beauty or bliss, or to any kind of traumatic events, whether they are individually, whether they are family oriented, whether they are generational or collective. Therefore, all these 40 years I practice and that we train, I felt very important that we understand and differentiate these fields and their forces, so they can be resources to enrich our life. For that, it is also important and sometimes underestimated how to learn to cultivate, to nourish and to strengthen them, these forces. See, the state of love enables us to feel the resonance with the flow of life. And some of you have been there when I gave a lecture on the resonance with the flow of life. And the resonance is in yours or the others. And when you perceive this resonance, and ultimately it does not allow you anymore to be destructive with yourself or with others. In that moment, you begin to honor the sacredness of your body and everybody's journey on this planet. Then the inquiry into the different states of consciousness allows you to become aware of the larger dimensions and complexities in life, and to gain another depth of understanding, and with that the ability also to communicate and to enter into a constructive dialogue and to find options and solutions for the sustenance of the earth and well-being of all sentient forms of life. That information we gain from the larger states and insights into states of consciousness. Energy then allows us to move and direct our love and the insights we gain from this expanded consciousness into the everyday life. That means the availability and clarity with which we express this energy is determined by our inner connectedness and by the willingness to share our humanity with others. And with that, by the practicing of the witness of the interconnectedness of all life. That all wisdom teachings also write and talk about. However, as we all know, when the perception of these fields of life is limited, by whatever reason, and you feel that you do not have enough energy, or you do not know how to access it, and I will not go into clinical topic here right now, unless they come up later in the questions. Or when love is just a fleeting moment, depending on what experiences you had in your life. And you were not so able to structure how you relate with others. And consciousness is more perceived as a concept for an intellectual discussion, but not an experience dimension of life. Then it's hard to access your full potential. That means to address and heal the fragmentation in ourselves, with others, and in the society at large. We must restore our dignity through the honest inner and outer dialogue, based on self-perception, the exchange of knowledge, intuition, and the practice of competence. So with the energy, love, and consciousness program of coevolution, you learn the basic principles to understand and overcome personal, generational, collective, and karmic restrictions. Therefore, this program is not only invaluable for everybody on the conscious path, but especially for all practitioners, nurses, teachers, group facilitators, or coaches. I mean, for everybody in the helping and consulting profession who wants to have a deeper knowledge about the underlying principles, and at the same time who is interested in an integrative, body-oriented, and mindfulness-centered experiential approach to their own work. So that's why also I divided this program into 3 parts, and each part has 3 workshops of 2 hours and 45 minutes with a short break. You can read all that, of course, in the descriptions. And since there have been more questions, I want to also use it to look briefly at the structure of this in 3 parts. Because part 1 is the future is the next moment of now. Some of you may recall the lecture I also gave with that topic. And as I promised, as soon as I have technically re-edited them, they will be all online, and I will let you know about it. The future is the next moment of now, is in the understanding that every breath you take now, and we can only take a breath in the now, will determine the next moment of now. That means what now is the future, is the next moment of now, is your next breath. And the quality of your state right now will determine the next moment. Therefore, your developmental years, of course, have an influence of how your state is in the now and how it may be influence the future moments. So to inquire about your present state of being, we have to look at your developmental year. That means to look at the filters that you have or had established. Because I understand that most of you have done already a lot of work, and you have your own practice or your own spiritual techniques that you feel comfortable with. And you have embodied and habituated a certain lifestyle. And this, of course, has already created also its own wiring in the brain. I mean, on and off, I have to let a few more people in, so sorry for the short interruption. So when I come back to the wiring of the brain, of course, I talk about the neuroplasticity that we have established through our way of living, our form of life, through our experiences. The good news is that we can shift these patterns, and with that also influence our neuroplasticity. That means the capacity to create and form new neuronal patterns. One of the concerns of a person was before he enrolled, I work now over 30 years in therapy and personal growth, and I expanded my spiritual practice, and I don't want to dig again into childhood topics. And who know my work and my attitude, I welcome these statements. And most of you who work with me or heard my lectures now know that my focus is on the pulsation of life. And depending on your life situations, naturally this pulsation will fluctuate, regulate, and integrate again. It's a natural process. However, if this process is not anymore so easy to regulate and to integrate, then we also have to look at the whole body-mind system, and the whole body-mind system is you, everybody individually of us. And we got to see if you can shift just by mindful attention, by grounding, or by conscious adjustment, or whether we still need to look at another underlying patterns, which origins may be traced back to some moments in your developmental years. And then we possibly have to address them for further integration again. We live our life in the experience of spiral form. It means our experience develops in spiral form, information is linear. So whatever you have experienced, let me take a simple example. You have father information, you have mother information, you have any kind of topic you can choose. Information will stay linear and will be always there as an information in your developmental spiral movement. It means at the beginning of the process, you may come with childhood attitudes, and they are very prevalent, they are very strong in the appearance. And then more and more you work on the issues, we integrate more, you release the energy that is held with these experiences, you open up the attachments, and the experience become lighter and lighter. But one of these moments, whether you go to a family dinner or whether it just pops into your mind, whatever the trigger may be, you become aware, wow, I'm triggered again this moment by meeting this person. This person opens up a resonance in me that is related to another experience that I had in my life. So in that moment, we got to see whether we can just adjust, become aware of it, breathe, help our body to adjust, and move on, or meet that person, or be in a meeting, or be in a group of people. Or you feel, I need to see what is that disturbing factor. That's the only reason to look again at developmental years. And they are important sometimes. And that is why in experimental and interactive workshop that we have, experiential means we go into some experiences, I guide you, I lead you, and you see what your experience will be. So we address topics like the somatic awareness and the practice of mindfulness. Everybody of you in the conscious field know these days the process of mindfulness. And it's about how we structure our experience on the level of our body, our feelings, our thinking, our mind, and in directing our will to realize our potential. So as you can see, it's not just breathing and a few yoga exercises, it's quite a deep observation and listening and becoming aware. As I always say, mindfulness as a gate to awareness, and the awareness is opening up fields of consciousness. We also will, of course, explore the matrix of grounding. And in some other lectures, I went into whole details about the exploration of the matrix of grounding, and we will do that also, of course, in this program. It's a grounding, it's a physical grounding, it's our emotional grounding, it's our mental and conceptual grounding. And it's, of course, our social grounding. And once we are connected with all these fields, we ground in our spirituality or in a space much larger than us. As you can see, that's topic for a whole meeting by itself. And then, of course, very special, the third meeting in the first part is a body. It's a temple of the soul, if you want to call it like that. In our work, also addressed as a body-mind field. That means in our personal development, we formed working models. What works for us? How could we structure our life? How could we adapt? And that influences, of course, our emotions, our body reactions, our thinking, our behavior, and with that also our belief system. They fulfilled an important need in our early development, but are often not adequate anymore for who you are today. And by experiencing and observing body reactions, understanding the underlying needs, and learning how to nourish them, you can successfully change these patterns. It is very often, what shall I say, an underestimated part in personal work. Of course, the analytical work helps us to understand certain situations, but they haven't changed the energetic patterns. And the energetic patterns, that is an art, and that must be learned how to skillfully observe them, address them, open them, and guide the person that they can nourish them. That's where the independence comes in. And I may refer to that later on one more time. I mean, of course, as you can see in a program with 3 parts, that means 9 meetings altogether, 2 hours and 45 minutes, we can touch into and understand a large field that you can already translate and transfer into your life. But if you are interested to really dive deep into the professional realm, then I really would like to refer to the global training program that we begin in person in Tuscany in May 2021. Part 2 is then again 3 meetings as the topic life between individual and collective trauma and beyond. That means healing and integration of traumatic life situations. I mean, for over 40 years now, we address in our work of co-evolution and co-soma the interwoven fabric of developmental, shock, family, generational, collective, and other traumas. They are very often the basis for so many difficulties, of fears and distortions that people face in their life. All these experiences, of course, take place in a family and in a specific social setting. And with that, they can be carried over through generations. And in our work, we address this as family and generational trauma. And all these accumulated moments of experiences echo then through the generations. I also gave a lecture on that more in detail, because that is exactly what our actions and interactions do. They reverberate through space and time. And as we know from quantum physics and the holographic universe, our being and actions in life create corresponding vibrational patterns that connects us all on a collective level. Therefore, we work on the topics of collective trauma, and we also activate with our work the dynamics and toward collective healing. And my own research in infrared analysis and biophoton coherence measurements indicates that we are not only body and brain functions. We are vibratory beings in the spectrum of subtle energy and dense matter. That means we are a body-mind field. And the strength and resilience and direction of this field is determined by its coherence. We hear so much these days about coherence. So I did some research how we can influence coherence with our consciousness. And in supporting a person to transform difficulties and traumas in life in a skillful way and learned way, we establish and strengthen coherence. That means the field that may be in fear, the disorganized, that splitting, that dissociating, and so on, that we strengthen, we bring it back, there is a coherence. And with that, we enable the creation of a unified whole with the ability to sustain form. Otherwise, we only have it in the moment of medication, in the moment of exercise, in the moment of a clinical presence. No, we got to find a way how we can enable the person to create this unified whole so that they can sustain their form. Which means, as I also explain it, establish self-empowerment. And with that, mindful presence. Self-empowerment not as an ego, not as a moment of putting yourself above situation. Self-empowerment is coming in contact with your own capacity to direct your energy and being in charge of it. And with that, you can rest with your matrix of grounding in mindful presence. And from there, you create community. I mean, we done specific 12-day trauma trainings in Germany, but also especially in South America, Chile, Mexico, Colombia, countries that had terrific difficulties. Atrocities. And when you hear, when people share about what they have experienced, it's heart-wrenching, and you sometimes cannot fathom it. But then to work in the trauma work, to integrate some of the dissociated moments, the fears, the energy that could not be directed for life again, and bringing that into a social interaction. Social workers worked with victims and people who caused the situation. So all this kind of conflictuous work, if that is influenced by a deeper understanding of how to work with the trauma and carrying underneath the principles of life and humanity gives a whole different approach than just conflict resolution. But if conflict resolution is influenced by these patterns, you can see the dimension in which we can work. So that means from the teaching of the basic principles of trauma work, we will then expand into practical application in a person's life situation and how to translate this knowledge into working with groups. And by coming together and witnessing and feeling, supporting each other, and knowing that we are all connected socially as human beings and in the larger field of existence, then we contribute to global coherence. And that's needed, especially today, for the global issues of health, of wealth, environment, justice, freedom, and peace. And part 2 addresses the topic one more time, from birth to Buddhahood. So that means the whole cycle that leads to self-empowerment and mindful presence. And you may have seen the beautiful graphics that we composed of the embryo that moves into Buddhahood and is there in self-empowerment and mindful presence. Some of you may had already the chance to participate in our Zen mindfulness and psychotherapy or mindfulness and leadership programs. And whatever, I explain it to a certain degree, but what does self-empowerment really mean is important for me, and I repeat it again, is fully being aware of the love that you can be in, being conscious about the state of being, state of the other, state of the world, and being able to direct your energy, to access your energy and direct it. This is quite a process, and most of us took years, and I'm still in the process, so it's a never-ending process. So, and what does it mean to create community? We have the workshop that we also gave at Etherlane, the mindfulness of relating. So in that moment, it's not mindfulness as an individual process and act that's important, because without the individual grounding, we are not of full support of the other. That's where I always also make the difference between empathy and compassion. Both is needed in this world. But if I want to support and be of help for another person, then I need to stay on my own ground and be with that person. Means empathy is I perceive you, I see you and your being on my own ground. Alone by the word compassion, passion from suffering, from the Latin word, and come with, I suffer with you, or I sense into your suffering. That capacity, to have this capacity and develop that, unites us in our humanity and opens up to be in loving presence. So with this, I invite you, of course, to join people on the path of energy, love, and consciousness, and explore with us mindfulness and body awareness, empathic sharing, listening, personal processing, short lectures, meditations, and more depending on what comes up. So from individual to karmic and collective dimensions. And of course also including science, from neuroscience to quantum physics. So of course it's good if you can take part in the whole series, but we divided it into 3 parts so that there's an option that can be taken independently. And we made a very affordable charge of only 105 or 105 euro or $118. So the main focus here is to open your inner and outer horizon, to discover your truth and trust your path, and fully live these dimensions of energy, love, and consciousness.